I froze in the doorway of my master bedroom, keys still dangling from my fingertips. My dresser and nightstand sat abandoned in the hallway behind me like discarded toys. Two strangers with paint rollers were transforming my carefully selected gray walls into a nauseating shade of bright pink. And there, in the center of it all, stood my brother's wife Stephanie, beaming like she'd just discovered the cure for cancer. "Oh good, you're home," she chirped, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "We're renovating before Dylan and I move in. Don't you love the color?" The room went silent. My parents' smiles faded as they registered the look on my face. My brother Dylan shifted uncomfortably, and I felt something inside me, something that had been bending for months, finally snap. But this nightmare didn't materialize out of nowhere. Family doesn't typically break into your house and start redecorating without a history. Mine had been building for the better part of a year, and it all started with what they considered the stupidest decision of my adult life. I bought a house that was falling apart. At 33, I was tired of cramped apartments with beige walls I couldn't paint and landlords who considered a picture hook an act of vandalism. I wanted something that was mine, truly mine. When I found the listing, the realtor's photos were so bad they looked like they'd been taken during an earthquake. The yard resembled a wildlife sanctuary for weeds. Paint peeled from every surface like the house was shedding its skin. But the moment I stepped through that front door, I felt something I'd never experienced in any sterile apartment: possibility. Pure, unbridled possibility. My family, however, reacted like I'd announced plans to live in a cardboard box under a bridge. "Alexandra, what are you thinking?" Mom asked at Sunday dinner, using that special tone mothers reserve for when they believe their adult children are making catastrophic life choices. "You could get a nice apartment with everything already done. Why would you want all that work?" Dad just shook his head like I joined a cult. "That house is going to eat up every cent you have." Dylan, my younger brother, added his wisdom. "Seriously, Alex, just get a condo or something. This sounds like a nightmare." His wife Stephanie sat beside him, rolling her eyes dramatically whenever I mentioned my renovation plans. Stephanie had this way of acting like she knew better about everything, despite never having held a real job and spending most of her time staging elaborate coffee photos for her 15 Instagram followers. But their opinions couldn't touch the vision I carried. I saw beyond the peeling paint and overgrown yard. I saw my home. As an interior designer, I had connections with reliable contractors who wouldn't gouge me on pricing. I understood what went into renovations and felt ready for the challenge. The mortgage was actually affordable because of the home's condition, which felt like the universe throwing me a bone for once. The next 6 months were exhausting in ways I hadn't imagined possible. I painted until my arms threatened to detach from my body. I learned plumbing terminology I never wanted to know. The Home Depot staff started greeting me by name, asking about my day like old friends. There were moments I questioned everything, like when the electrical inspector delivered the news that the entire system needed replacing, or when 3 days of rain revealed a roof leak that had me placing buckets around my living room like some twisted game of musical chairs. But slowly, beautifully, the transformation unfolded. Fresh paint brightened dingy walls. Refinished floors revealed gorgeous hardwood that had been suffocating under ancient carpet. Updated fixtures gave the bathroom new life. The jungle outside became an actual garden. Every completed project fueled my determination. Every fixed problem reinforced my pride. This was mine. Every color choice, every fixture, every plant in the garden, all mine. That's when I decided to host a housewarming party. I announced it during our regular Sunday family dinner. Dylan and Stephanie were there, as always. They rented a tiny apartment but seemed to live at my parents' place on weekends, which should have been my first clue about their financial situation. "I'm having a housewarming party next Saturday," I said, trying to keep my voice casual. "I'd love for you all to see the finished house." Stephanie's response was immediate and cruel. She laughed, not the kind that signals genuine amusement, but the sharp kind meant to cut. "I don't want to go to that pigsty," she said between giggles, as if she delivered comedy gold. Heat rushed to my face, but I kept my voice steady. "Actually, I completed major renovations. But if you don't want to come, you don't have to." Stephanie's face flushed, and she spent the rest of dinner pouting like a toddler denied candy. My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances but promised they'd attend, though their enthusiasm felt forced at best. The party started at 6 on Saturday. My coworkers, friends, and neighbors arrived promptly, walking through my home with genuine amazement. They asked about design choices, complimented my work, expressed sincere admiration for what I'd accomplished. After months of family skepticism, the validation felt like a warm blanket. But my family was nowhere in sight. An hour passed. Then 90 minutes. Just as I was accepting they'd completely blown me off, I heard cars pulling into my driveway. My parents, Dylan, and Stephanie walked through the front door with expressions that clearly said they were expecting to find me living in squalor. But the second they stepped inside, everything changed, at least for my parents. "Oh my goodness, Alexandra," Mom gasped, her eyes wide as she took in the transformation. "This is absolutely gorgeous. You have wonderful taste." Finally. The vindication tasted sweeter than the wine we were drinking. But then I noticed Stephanie. Instead of admiring anything, she was hunting for flaws like a health inspector at a restaurant with multiple violations. She ran her finger along surfaces, squinted at paint lines, examined corners with exaggerated scrutiny. It was almost comical watching her determined search for something, anything, to criticize. She disappeared upstairs for a while. When she returned, she announced loudly enough for nearby guests to hear, "The color in your master bedroom is terrible. I would definitely repaint that." I smiled at her sweetly. "Well, when you have your own house, you can paint the walls any color you want. Even pink." Everyone knew about Stephanie's obsession with pink everything. My comment hit its target perfectly. Her face reddened and she straightened like she'd been shocked. "Come on, Dylan. We're leaving," she snapped, marching toward the door. Dylan gave me an apologetic look but followed her anyway. My parents looked embarrassed and disappointed, but they left too, heads down. Honestly, the party improved after they left. About a week later, Mom surprised me with a phone call. She wanted to visit again, just the two of us. "I feel terrible about how Saturday ended," she said. "I'd really like to spend time looking at everything you've done without all the drama." Her visit was wonderful. She walked through each room slowly, asking thoughtful questions, offering genuine compliments. We had coffee in my new kitchen, and she admitted she'd been wrong to discourage me. "Your father and I should have supported you from the beginning," she said, wrapping her hands around her mug. "You really knew what you were doing." As she was leaving, I handed her a spare key. "In case I ever go out of town," I explained. "Maybe you could water my plants or check on things." She hugged me tightly, and it felt like perhaps we were rebuilding our relationship despite everything. My mom visited several times over the next couple of months. Sometimes she'd bring groceries and we'd cook together. Other times she'd just stop by to check on me. It felt nice, comfortable, like family should feel. Dylan and Stephanie, meanwhile, seemed to vanish from the planet. Dylan would occasionally send random texts, but he never mentioned the house or the party. Stephanie didn't contact me at all, which was perfectly fine by me. 4 peaceful months passed. I settled into my routine, loving my space, enjoying my independence. Work was thriving, and I'd started dating someone new. Life felt balanced and good. Then my mother called one Thursday evening, her voice carrying that careful, gentle tone that immediately set off warning bells in my head. "Alexandra, honey, would you like to come for dinner this Saturday? It's been a while since we've all been together as a family." Something about her tone made my stomach clench, but I agreed. I missed our family dinners and thought enough time had passed for everyone to behave normally again. Saturday arrived, and I drove to my parents' house. Dylan and Stephanie were already there, which wasn't surprising since they practically lived there on weekends. "Hey, Alex," Dylan said when I walked in, his friendliness so forced it was almost painful to witness. Stephanie barely glanced at me, but at least she wasn't actively glaring. We sat down for dinner. Mom had made roast beef with mashed potatoes, my favorite, and conversation remained awkwardly polite, everyone asking safe questions about work and weather, carefully steering clear of anything that might spark conflict. Then, right in the middle of me telling a story about a difficult client, Mom put down her fork and gave me a sweet smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Alexandra, I wanted to talk to you about something," she said in that same gentle voice from the phone call. Everyone stopped eating and looked at me. Dylan was smiling too, that puppy dog smile he used to give me when we were kids and he wanted to borrow money. "Dylan and Stephanie's lease is ending soon," Mom continued. "And with everything happening with the economy and Dylan's work situation, they're having a hard time finding something they can afford." My stomach dropped. I knew exactly where this was heading. "So we were thinking," she went on, her voice honeyed with false casualness, "maybe they could stay with you for a little while, just temporarily, until they get back on their feet." The silence that followed felt eternal. Everyone stared at me, waiting for my answer. Dylan was still doing that pathetic, hopeful smile. I took a deep breath. "I don't want anyone else living in my house." Mom's face fell. "Alexandra, this isn't just anyone. This is your brother and his wife." "I understand that," I said, struggling to keep my voice level. "But my answer is still no." That's when Stephanie decided to jump in with her characteristic charm. "I always knew you were selfish and arrogant," she spat, her voice dripping venom. I looked directly at her. "Funny, because I remember you saying at my housewarming that you didn't want to come to my pigsty. Now you're ready to live in it?" Stephanie shrugged dismissively. "If it's free, I guess I could tolerate it." The audacity was breathtaking. Dylan started his sob story next. "Come on, Alex, you have to understand my situation. They're doing layoffs at work and cut my salary by 20%. We're really struggling." I looked from him to Stephanie, who was scrolling through her phone like this conversation bored her. Maybe Stephanie should get a job then, instead of pretending to be an influencer. Stephanie's head snapped up. "How dare you?" "I'm just saying," I continued calmly, "if money's tight, maybe both adults in the relationship should be working." Stephanie's performance was Oscar-worthy. She burst into dramatic tears and ran from the dining room. I could hear her stomping up the stairs to my old bedroom like a teenager having a tantrum. "Now look what you've done," Dylan snarled, jumping from his chair. "You're such a bitch, Alexandra." He chased after his wife, taking the stairs two at a time. My parents sat frozen, giving me twin looks of disappointment that suggested I'd committed some unforgivable betrayal. I finished my dinner as quickly as politeness allowed and left. After that disaster, complete silence descended. No calls, no texts, no invitations. It was as though I'd been erased from the family album. A month passed without a word from any of them. No Saturday dinner invitations from Mom. No random texts from Dylan. Nothing. Honestly, the silence felt like a relief. I didn't want any more guilt trips about letting Dylan and Stephanie move into the home I'd worked so hard to create. I had my own life, and I was enjoying the peace. But then one Tuesday, everything changed. I had a meeting scheduled with a potential new client at 2 in the afternoon, a substantial renovation project with excellent pay. Around 11:30, she called to reschedule because of a family emergency. I decided to head home and work there for the rest of the day, arriving around noon, about 3 hours earlier than normal for a Tuesday. As I pulled into my driveway, I noticed two familiar cars parked on the street in front of my house. My parents' sedan. Dylan's beat-up hatchback. My first thought was concern, maybe something was wrong, an emergency they needed to discuss in person. But then logic kicked in. If that were the case, they would have called first. I used my key to unlock the front door, and the moment I stepped inside, I knew something was deeply wrong. My belongings were scattered throughout the entryway and living room. Furniture from my master bedroom, my dresser, nightstand, even my bedside lamps, sat abandoned in the hallway. I could hear voices upstairs. Loud voices, like people working. My heart hammered against my ribs as I climbed the stairs. The voices grew clearer, coming from my bedroom. My master bedroom. I stepped into the doorway and froze. My parents stood against one wall, smiling. Dylan was moving boxes. Stephanie stood in the center of the room, directing two men I'd never seen before, workers with paint rollers and brushes. They were painting my walls. My carefully chosen, perfectly gray walls that I'd spent weeks selecting just the right shade for. They were painting them pink. Bright, obnoxious, Pepto-Bismol pink. What the hell is going on here? The words tore from my throat before I could stop them. Everyone jumped and turned. The workers paused mid-roll, paintbrushes dripping onto my hardwood floors. My parents looked suddenly guilty. Dylan resembled a deer caught in headlights. But Stephanie just kept smiling. "Oh good, you're home," she said, as if this were the most normal situation imaginable. "We're renovating the master bedroom before Dylan and I move in." "Don't you love the color?" Rage burned through me, hot and blinding. "Stop," I ordered the workers. "Stop painting my walls right now." The men exchanged confused glances but set down their brushes. I turned to my mother. "What do you think you're doing? How did you get in here?" Mom had the audacity to smile reassuringly. "I used my key, honey. We're all family here, and we knew you'd want Dylan and Stephanie to be comfortable when they move in." "Move in?" My voice sounded strange even to my own ears. "I told you no. I very clearly told you no. We knew you'd come around," Dad said confidently. "You always do the right thing eventually." The right thing? I could barely form words through my anger. The right thing was letting these people break into my house and destroy my bedroom? I took a deep breath, trying to regain control. "Get out. All of you, get out of my house right now, or I'm calling the police." My parents started lecturing about family loyalty and selfishness. Dylan shouted about his financial struggles and how I didn't understand his situation. Stephanie called me ungrateful and entitled. The workers, sensing the explosive atmosphere, packed their supplies with remarkable efficiency and disappeared down the stairs. "I'm serious," I said when they were gone, my voice dangerously quiet. "Get out now, or I will physically remove you myself." They looked at me like I'd sprouted a second head, but something in my expression must have convinced them I meant business. One by one, they filed out of my bedroom, down the stairs, and out the front door. I stood alone in my half-destroyed bedroom, staring at the walls. One side remained my chosen gray. The other was covered in that sickening pink that made my stomach turn. I was shaking with fury, but I knew I needed to act quickly. These people had proven they would stop at nothing to get what they wanted, and I couldn't let this happen again. First, I called Tony, one of my trusted contractors who lived nearby. "Tony, I need you to come change my locks right now," I said. "It's an emergency." While waiting for Tony, I drove to the hardware store and bought paint matching my original bedroom color. I was determined to erase every trace of their intrusion that night, even if it meant staying up until dawn. Tony arrived quickly and changed every lock, front door, back door, garage. After he left, I spent the evening and most of the night repainting those walls, fueled by a mixture of anger and determination. When I finally finished around 2 in the morning, exhausted and paint-spattered, my bedroom looked normal again. Like they had never been there at all. The next morning, I called a security company. "I want cameras around the entire perimeter of my house," I told them, "and a full alarm system, motion sensors, door sensors, everything." They came out that same day and installed it all. Cameras covering every angle, motion detectors, door and window sensors, all connected to an app on my phone for remote monitoring. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe again. My house was secure, my locks were changed, and if anyone tried to pull another stunt, I'd have video evidence. That evidence came in handy much sooner than I expected. Just 2 days after the installation, I was at my desk at work when my phone began buzzing with alerts from the security app. Motion detected. Front entrance attempted entry. Front door alarm system activated. My heart raced as I opened the app and pulled up the live camera feed. There was Dylan, standing at my front door, fumbling with what looked like the old spare key I'd given Mom. I watched him try the key, jiggle it uselessly in the lock, growing visibly frustrated when it wouldn't turn. He stepped back, looking around to check for witnesses. Then he walked to his car and returned with something that made my blood run cold. A crowbar. My own brother was trying to break into my house with a crowbar. He wedged it into the door frame and began prying, trying to force the door. The alarm blared. I could see the flashing lights on camera. Dylan must have heard it too, because he suddenly froze, looked around frantically, dropped the crowbar, and sprinted back to his car. He peeled away from the curb like he was fleeing a crime scene, which, in fact, he was. I sat at my desk, staring at my phone, completely stunned. I knew things were bad between us, but I never imagined Dylan would resort to breaking and entering. This wasn't family drama anymore. This was criminal behavior. I saved the footage and drove straight to the police station. I want to file a report for attempted breaking and entering, I told the officer at the front desk. They took me seriously when I showed them the video. Dylan's face was clearly visible. You could see him trying the key, then retrieving the crowbar. There was no denying what he'd done. I filed the report and provided all the footage. They assured me they'd follow up promptly. Saturday evening, my phone rang. It was Mom, and she was hysterical before I even said hello. "Alexandra, what have you done?" "The police came to our house and arrested Dylan. They said you filed a report claiming he tried to break into your house." "He did try to break into my house," I replied calmly. "I have video proof. You need to drop those charges immediately," she demanded through tears. "This is your brother we're talking about. Maybe my brother shouldn't have tried to break into my house with a crowbar." Mom was sobbing now, saying I was destroying the family, asking how I could do this to my own brother. "I'll drop the charges," I said finally. "But only if you all promise to leave me alone. No more showing up at my house. No more trying to force me to let them move in. No more drama. You leave me completely alone." She agreed instantly. Yes, whatever you want. Just please drop the charges." After hanging up, my phone exploded with calls and texts. Dad, Dylan, Stephanie, all begging me to drop the charges, promising they'd never bother me again if I just went to the police and withdrew the complaint. Their desperation was evident. "Please, Alexandra, we promise to leave you alone, just drop the charges." "I'm sorry, I messed up, I'll never do it again, just help me out this once. We swear on our lives we won't contact you anymore, just please fix this." I let them sweat overnight. But the next morning, I returned to the police station and withdrew the complaint. Dylan was released that day. With no previous record, they'd only questioned him and given him a warning. But it was enough to terrify him and the rest of my family into respecting my boundaries. It worked. No one contacted me after that. Not one call, not one text, nothing. It was as if they'd finally understood I was serious about wanting to be left alone. 6 months passed in complete peace. No drama, no guilt trips, no surprise visits. I could leave for work knowing my house would remain exactly as I left it. I could travel without fearing what I might find upon return. I was starting to forget the whole ordeal when I ran into my cousin Rebecca at the grocery store. We'd always gotten along, but I hadn't spoken to her since before all this started. "Alexandra, how are you?" she exclaimed, giving me a warm hug. "I've been wondering how you've been doing." We chatted about work and life before she brought up the family. "So I heard Dylan and Stephanie are living with your parents now," she said casually. "Your mom mentioned Stephanie's pregnant. That must be exciting." Pregnant. That explained a lot. "Yeah, your mom said they're really struggling financially. Dylan's job situation hasn't improved, and now with a baby coming." Rebecca shook her head sympathetically. "I feel bad for them, but I guess your parents are happy to help out." I nodded noncommittally, unwilling to dive into the whole saga in the cereal aisle. Driving home, I reflected on what she told me. Dylan and Stephanie were living with my parents. Stephanie was pregnant. Dylan was still struggling financially, and my parents were supporting them through it all. Did I feel guilty? Perhaps a little. But mostly, I felt relieved that it wasn't my problem to solve. I'd made the right choice buying my house. I'd made the right choice renovating it the way I wanted. I'd made the right choice protecting my boundaries. And I definitely made the right choice installing that security system and filing that police report when Dylan crossed the line. My house remains beautiful. I still love coming home to it every day. I still feel proud looking around at what I've accomplished, and I don't have to share it with anyone I don't choose to share it with. Some might call that selfish. I call it self-preservation. I worked hard for what I have, and I have every right to protect it. My family made their choices, and I made mine. I'm not responsible for fixing their problems or letting them take advantage of me just because we share DNA. Sometimes you have to choose yourself, even when it's difficult. Even when others call you selfish. Even when it means losing relationships you thought mattered. Because at the end of the day, you're the one who has to live with the consequences of your choices. And I'm living pretty damn well. Thanks for listening, and if you liked this story, share it with someone who needs to hear that protecting your boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary. Don't forget to comment and subscribe for more stories about finding the courage to stand your ground when it matters most. Sometimes the strongest walls we build aren't made of brick and mortar, but of the boundaries we have the courage to defend.